The message pinged on my phone while I was finalizing a new contract with an investor, the figures looking better than I had imagined. I need your help, Alex. I'm in trouble. I've lost everything. Please, I've made mistakes. I didn't even flinch. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I processed the words. David. The man who had walked out on me years ago, who had left me to rebuild my life alone, was now crawling back, desperate for assistance. His voice in the message sounded like a man on the edge, but I wasn't that girl anymore. I didn't need to help him. I hit send before I even thought about it. Good luck. Hi, I'm Alex Blackwell. You might have heard of me. I built my empire from the ground up, in spite of the odds and in spite of those who never believed I could. For years, I was told I wasn't enough, by my ex, by the world, by the people who thought they could tear me down. But every single time, I got back up. Today, I'm not here to talk about the riches or the success. That's the easy part. I'm here to tell you about the journey, the cost of making your own path, and the truth behind the facade. Because behind every empire, there's a story of betrayal, of loss, and of the moment you realize, sometimes the best revenge is success. But first, let me tell you how it all started with a text message. I sat at my sleek glass desk, the city sprawled beneath me like a quiet kingdom I had built from nothing. The walls of my office were lined with accolades, awards, and a few personal mementos, each piece a reminder of how far I'd come. It was a far cry from the life I used to know, the one where I was nothing more than a shadow in someone else's story. The phone buzzed, a message flashing across the screen. I stared at the name. David. My fingers hovered above the screen, the memories flooding back before I even unlocked the message. David. The man who had walked away from me years ago, claiming I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough for his ambitions, for his life. He said I was too soft, too dreamy for someone like him. I never forgot those words. I never forgot the way he left, with barely a backward glance, as if I was just some passing inconvenience in his life. And now, years later, he had the audacity to contact me. I opened the message. The words were brief. I need to talk. Can we meet? I'm in trouble. There it was. The callousness, the entitlement, the same feeling that had gripped me when he left. But this time, I wasn't the girl who had been left behind. This time, I had built a life, one that was beyond his wildest expectations. I was the woman in control now, the woman who had a fortune of my own, a company that had become a titan in the tech industry. He was nothing to me, just a shadow from my past. But curiosity gnawed at me, and somewhere in the pit of my stomach, I knew I had to face him. I typed back a single word, fine. The bar we agreed to meet at wasn't much, dimly lit, with faded leather booths and the smell of old wood and whiskey in the air. It was the kind of place you went when you wanted anonymity, when you didn't want anyone to recognize you. Chose it because it was the kind of place where David wouldn't think twice about his past actions. He would walk in, as if nothing had changed, and expect me to pick up where we left off. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I arrived early, sitting in the corner booth where I could watch the entrance. Time felt heavy as I waited. It had been years since I'd seen him, but his face was still ingrained in my memory. The sharp jawline, the arrogant tilt of his head, like the world had always been his to command. My hands rested on the table, steady. I wasn't nervous. I didn't need to be. I had become something more than I'd ever imagined, and it was time for him to see that. The door swung open, and there he was. David. The same arrogant walk, the same cold look in his eyes. But there was something different now. He looked worn, tired, as if the weight of his own world was finally starting to crush him. He spotted me immediately, his gaze locking onto mine, and for the briefest moment, something like recognition flashed across his face. Not love, not affection, just a simple acknowledgement that I wasn't who I used to be. He took the seat across from me, sliding into the booth with a sigh. You look different, he said, his voice more strained than I remembered. I raised an eyebrow. I'd hope so. David's eyes flitted nervously around the room, avoiding mine as if he was searching for something to hold on to. It was strange seeing him like this, vulnerable. Look, Alex, I didn't want things to end like they did. You left me. I interrupted, my voice steady but cold. I didn't have a choice in how it ended, David. You made that decision for both of us. His jaw tightened, and I could see the regret in his eyes. I know. And I've regretted it. Every day since. I leaned back, crossing my arms over my chest. You regret it? Well, how convenient. I didn't get that luxury. I didn't get to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I had to keep going. I had to rebuild my life from scratch. And I did it without you. The silence between us grew thick, heavy. David's eyes flicked to the table, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. I know you've done well for yourself, Alex. I'm not here to take that from you. He paused, looking me in the eye for the first time since he walked in. I need your help. I didn't speak for a moment, processing his words. Your help? I repeated slowly, almost incredulously. What makes you think I owe you anything? David let out a strained laugh. I know what I did. But I'm in deep, Alex. I've lost everything. The business, the connections, everything. I'm desperate. I thought, maybe you could help me get back on my feet. I could feel the old resentment bubbling up inside me, threatening to spill over. But I kept it in check. He wanted help, but I knew exactly what he was after. He wasn't asking for forgiveness or a second chance. He was asking to use me, to lean on the success I had built with my blood, sweat, and tears. You think I'm going to just hand over everything I've worked for? I asked, my voice low and controlled. You think I'd give you a second shot at my life after everything you did? I built this empire on my own, David. And I didn't need you then, and I don't need you now. His face reddened, and for a moment I saw the arrogance that had once been there. But then it softened again, replaced with something like vulnerability. Please, Alex, he said quietly. I've made so many mistakes. I thought maybe you could give me a chance to fix things, to at least make it right. I studied him, watching as his words hung in the air between us. I knew what he wanted, and I knew the power I held in this room, in this moment. But as I looked at him, something else surfaced, a deep, bitter satisfaction. He hadn't built a fortune. He hadn't made anything of himself. And now, in his moment of weakness, he wanted to come back to me, the person he'd abandoned, to fix his broken world. David, I said, my voice cool and final. You didn't just leave me. You left the potential of everything I could have been. And now you want me to fix your mistakes? I think you've mistaken the past for the present. I'm not the girl who needed you. I'm the woman you never imagined could rise from the ashes you left behind. David's face fell, and for the first time I saw him for what he truly was. Not the man who had once been my everything, but a man who had nothing. And I couldn't help but smile, the satisfaction of seeing his downfall in full swing settling over me. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the weight of my words pressing down on him. For a moment, I thought he might stand up and walk out. But instead, he leaned forward, his voice more desperate now. Alex, you don't understand. I've lost everything. My business is falling apart. My investors are pulling out. I'm drowning. I need your expertise, your connections. You've built an empire from nothing. You're the one who can make it right. I kept my eyes locked on his, not flinching. You had everything, I said softly. You had your chance. I gave up everything for you once. I gave up my dreams to fit into your world. And now, you come crawling back expecting me to fix your mess? His eyes narrowed, frustration flickering across his face. It's not about what you gave up, Alex, he said, his voice lowering. It's about what I can't do anymore. You don't need to help me out of kindness. I just need you to fix the mess I created. You owe me that much. Do I? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't owe you anything. You walked away from me when I needed you most, when I was still figuring out who I was. And now that I've figured it out, you want me to pull you back into the game? after you turned your back on me and everything we built? David's expression faltered, his usual bravado cracking for a split second. I know, I screwed up, okay? But this is different. This isn't just about me. This is about my family, my legacy, everything I've worked for. It's all slipping away. I sighed, leaning back in my chair, my gaze shifting away from him, as if contemplating the situation. Family and legacy, I muttered. Funny how those words mean something different when it's convenient for you. David looked like he had been slapped, but there was no turning back now. The past was out in the open, and so was the truth. I'm not going to beg, Alex, he said, his voice a little firmer now. But I am asking you, as someone who used to care about me, to help me. This could be the turning point for both of us. I paused for a moment, considering his words carefully. A part of me, maybe the part of me that still remembered the years we spent together, the dreams we once shared, wanted to help him. I had the resources, the power to pull him back from the brink. But then I remembered all the years I'd spent trying to rebuild myself, trying to prove to everyone, including him, that I was more than his discarded dream. Help you? I said slowly. You want me to risk everything I've built so you can stand on my shoulders and take what you couldn't hold on your own? No, David, that's not how this works. I didn't fight my way to the top just to give you a handout. His face hardened. Fine, then you can watch me lose it all. I nodded. I already am. The days following our meeting were strange. The air between us had shifted, and while David remained a constant specter in my life, my thoughts became consumed by what he had said. He was still desperate, still clinging to the remnants of his former self. But I had no room for that kind of weakness in my world anymore. I kept pushing forward with my business, closing deals, meeting with investors, and expanding my reach. Yet, despite the success and the forward momentum, there was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach, a feeling that I wasn't fully in control of the situation. One evening, just as I was about to leave the office, I received a call from one of my top executives, Rachel. Alex, we've been getting some strange reports, she said, her voice laced with concern. There are whispers in the industry that David's company is spreading rumors about us. They're saying we're losing clients, that we're overextending ourselves with the new projects. It's a full-blown smear campaign. I could feel my pulse quicken. Smear campaign? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Yes, Rachel continued. They're trying to undermine our credibility. It's not just one or two people. It's coordinated. The timing's too perfect. My heart sank as I connected the dots. David. He wasn't just asking for help. He was actively trying to sabotage me, trying to take me down, using the only thing he had left, his influence. He knew that if he couldn't climb back into the life I had built, he would tear it apart from the inside. I felt a rush of anger flood my veins. It wasn't enough that he had walked out on me and left me to build everything alone. Now, he was coming for my success, for everything I had fought for. I slammed my hand against the desk, the sound echoing through the quiet office. No, I whispered under my breath. This ends now. I grabbed my phone and dialed Rachel's number again. Get me everything you can on David's activities. I want to know who's behind this smear campaign, and I want it stopped. Yesterday. Rachel's voice was filled with resolve. On it. I set the phone down, staring out of my office window at the lights of the city below. I had built this empire. From scratch. I wasn't about to let anyone, especially not David, destroy it. He thought he could ruin me, but he had underestimated me. If he wanted to play dirty, he was about to learn that I could play the game better than anyone. The next move was mine, and I wasn't about to let him win. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. My team and I were digging into the smear campaign, tracking down every piece of the puzzle that David and his team were trying to put together. Rachel was relentless, uncovering names, companies, and emails, hidden connections I had never thought to question. But what stood out the most was a conversation I had with Ari, Liam, my chief strategist. We found something interesting. Liam said, setting down a file with a grim expression. There's a pattern to this. David's company isn't just attacking us out of the blue. They're trying to provoke a reaction. They want you to make a mistake, something they can exploit. He's trying to drag you into the mud with him. I leaned forward, my mind racing. So, he's not just trying to sabotage my business. He wants to make me look bad? Make me lose control? Exactly, Liam replied. And he's counting on you losing your cool. That's how he gets back in the game. I felt a chill run through me. David wasn't playing by the same rules anymore. He had stopped trying to win by using his own strength and started trying to win by dragging me down to his level. But I wasn't going to play that game. I had built my empire on intelligence, on strategy. If David wanted to fight dirty, then I would have to show him how a real player operated. We're not going to lose our heads over this, I said, my voice cold and determined. We're going to do this smart. I want to send a message, one he can't ignore. It's time for him to see what happens when you go after me. I knew exactly how to strike back. The business world was all about leverage, and David had just handed me the perfect opportunity. If he thought he could damage my reputation by spreading lies, I would turn his own dirty tricks into his downfall. I sat in the meeting room the following morning, a small, quiet smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Across from me sat Harrison, the lawyer who had once represented David in all his business dealings. He had since fallen out of favor with David, but I knew he was still close enough to understand the full extent of David's schemes. Harrison was a man with ambition and a thirst for power, just like David. The difference was, he knew where the wind was blowing and it wasn't in David's direction anymore. Alex, Harrison greeted me, his voice smooth like he was used to playing both sides. I assume you've come to speak about David? Exactly, I said, my gaze unwavering. I have a proposal for you. Harrison raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Go on. I know David's plan, I began, leaning forward slightly. And I know how he operates. I know he's using your legal connections to try to discredit me, and I also know that you're in a precarious position. Your future is tied to him, but I can change that. He didn't say anything, but the slight twitch in his eye told me that I had his attention. I'm offering you a deal, I continued. You help me uncover all the details of David's scheme, and in return, I'll make sure you come out of this smelling like roses. I'll make sure your reputation remains intact. And you won't have to worry about David's downward spiral dragging you with him. Harrison sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. And what do you get out of this? He asked, though I could tell he already knew the answer. Control, I said simply. Control over the narrative. You see, David's been playing this game for far too long and he's forgetting one thing. In the business world, perception is everything. If we control the narrative, if we prove that he's the one behind the smear campaign, then his reputation will be shattered, and I'll be the one left standing at the top. He didn't respond immediately, but I could see the gears turning. In his mind. After a few tense moments, he finally spoke. You're offering me a way out, Alex. You're offering me a future where I don't have to play David's game anymore. He paused again. And you think I should take that deal? Absolutely, I said, my voice calm but resolute. You can stick with David and watch him drag you down with him. Or you can work with me and be a part of something bigger. The choice is yours, Harrison. There was a long silence. Finally, Harrison's lips twitched into a small, almost reluctant smile. All right, he said, the tone of his voice telling me everything I needed to know. You've got yourself a deal. The days that followed were a blur of strategy and information gathering. With Harrison on my side, I had access to legal documents and insider information that David had no idea I was privy to. Every secret, every mistake he had made began to come to light. His empire, built on lies and shady dealings, was slowly unraveling before my eyes. Rachel and Liam worked overtime, carefully compiling evidence. We tracked the origins of the smear campaign and traced it back to one of David's closest allies, a man named Graham, a former investor turned adversary. It was clear now. This wasn't just about David's business collapsing, it was about revenge. He wanted to bring me down for daring to surpass him. The more we uncovered, the more certain I became of one thing. David had made a grave mistake underestimating me. He thought I was just a woman scorned, someone who would crumble under the pressure. What he didn't understand was that I had already built something bigger than him, and I wasn't going to let him tear it apart. I leaned over the file of documents we had gathered, a sense of satisfaction flooding me. With Harrison's help, we now had everything we needed to crush David's campaign. All it would take was the right moment, the right move. The final chess pieces were in place. Now it was time to make David feel the weight of his actions. And this time, it would be him who felt like an outsider in his own game. The night before the board meeting, I sat alone in my penthouse overlooking the city. The skyline glittered beneath me, a reminder of everything I had worked for. The air was thick with anticipation, a sense of finality that I couldn't shake. Tomorrow was going to be the day that David's empire crumbled, and I would be there to watch it happen. I hadn't slept much. The past few days had been a whirlwind of planning, strategizing, and finally securing the leverage I needed. The smear campaign was now fully exposed, and David's own involvement was undeniable. But there was one last step, one final move, I needed to make to ensure that everything fell into place. I had to take control of the narrative, make sure that the world knew who David truly was and who I had become. I knew exactly what I had to do. The board meeting was set for the next morning. David, Harrison, and several of his most loyal allies would be present. The stakes couldn't be higher. David had spent years building his reputation, relying on manipulation and deceit. But tomorrow, all of that would come crashing down. I pulled up the email I had been working on all night, the one that would send shockwaves through David's carefully constructed world. It was simple but devastating. A detailed report, backed by hard evidence, showing David's involvement in the smear campaign. It included email exchanges, financial transactions, and sworn statements from those who had been manipulated by him. But the key was the final paragraph. David's own admission, in his own words, of what he had done. He had underestimated me, and now, I was going to make sure the world knew the truth. I hit send. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom with my head held high. David was already there, his posture as arrogant as ever, though I noticed the tension in his shoulders. The look in his eyes, a mix of anger and something deeper, told me that he knew something was coming, but he had no idea just how bad it would be. Harrison was there too, standing off to the side, his expression neutral, but alert. He had already seen the email I had sent to the board members. He knew what was coming. "Let's get this over with," David muttered, taking his seat at the head of the table. I nodded, walking to the center of the room. "I'd like to begin with a few words," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "David, you've spent years undermining me. You've spent months spreading lies, trying to discredit my company and my reputation. But the truth always finds its way to the surface." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in. "Today, I'm here to make sure the world knows exactly who you are. You've tried to tear me down, but it's you who will be exposed for the fraud you are." David shot up from his seat, his face flushed with fury. "You have no proof," he yelled, slamming his fist on the table. "Actually," I said, pulling out a stack of documents, "I have all the proof I need." I set them on the table in front of him, each page filled with damning evidence. I turned to the first sheet, reading aloud. "Emails from your team confirming the smear campaign against my company. Transactions from your personal accounts showing payments to those spreading false information. And here," I continued, flipping to the final page, "is your own confession. In your own words, David, you tried to destroy me because you couldn't stand the fact that I succeeded without you." The room fell into stunned silence. David's face went pale as the truth crashed over him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by a deep sense of panic. Harrison, standing off to the side, didn't even try to hide his smirk. "I think we all know where this is headed," he said quietly, watching David crumble before us. I turned back to the board, my gaze steady. It's clear now that David Blackwell has violated every principle of trust and ethics that this company was built on. He doesn't deserve to sit at the table anymore. David's mouth worked, but no sound came out. His empire, his reputation, everything he had spent years building was falling apart before his eyes. I glanced around the room, meeting the eyes of the board members. I've worked tirelessly to build this company into what it is today. I didn't rely on lies, deceit, or manipulation. I relied on hard work, integrity, and vision. And today, we're taking this company in a new direction, a direction where those values matter. I didn't need to say anything more. The board members, some of them nervous, some of them relieved, nodded in agreement. The votes were cast. David was removed from the company he had once controlled. And just like that, everything had changed. As I stood there, watching David gather his things and leave the room, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. It wasn't about the money, or the power, or even the victory. It was about the fact that I had done it. On my own. Without him. David had spent so long trying to tear me down, trying to make me feel small, trying to erase my existence from the world he had controlled. But now I had the last word. I had turned his betrayal into my triumph. And as I watched him walk out of that room, his empire in ruins, I realized that this victory wasn't just about business. It was about reclaiming everything he had tried to take from me, and proving that I was stronger than he had ever given me credit for. I turned to the board. "Let's get to work," I said, my voice calm but firm. "The future is ours." The days following the board meeting felt surreal. It was as if the world had shifted, and for the first time, I could see clearly, the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of freedom. I had built something incredible, something that couldn't be taken away, no matter how hard anyone tried to break me down. David was gone, his influence eradicated. His company, his reputation, everything he had worked so hard to build was now in ruins. But there was no sense of triumph in that. No joy in his downfall. It was, in a way, a hollow victory. He had been a part of my past, but I had long since moved on. The real victory wasn't in seeing him lose. It was in knowing that I had come so far without him, without anyone's help or approval. I stood in my office looking out over the city. The skyline had always been my reminder of what I had achieved, but now it felt different. It wasn't just a symbol of success anymore. It was a representation of the journey, the struggles, the failures, and the quiet moments of perseverance, when no one was watching. Those were the moments that had shaped me into who I was now. But even with everything in place, the lingering question remained: what was next? What did I do now that I had secured everything I had ever worked for? It was a strange feeling, sitting in the place I had fought so hard to claim, knowing that I had finally silenced all the doubts, all the insecurities that had once haunted me. The only thing left was to decide how I wanted to shape my future, what direction I would take now that the path I had been on had come to an end. I wasn't sure yet. But for the first time, I felt okay with that. I had learned to embrace the unknown, to understand that life wasn't about following a straight line to success. It was about making choices that aligned with who I was and what I valued. And I knew now more than ever that my value was in what I had created on my own. As I turned to leave my office, I glanced one last time at the skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. There was peace in that moment. Quiet sense of contentment that I hadn't expected to find. I had built a life that no one could ever take from me. And now, I was free to decide what came next. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about creating something new, something even more extraordinary than what I had already achieved. And for the first time in a long while, I was excited to see where that journey would take me. The future was mine to shape, and this time I wasn't going to let anyone or anything get in my way.